All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Great show ahead. In the third hour, instead of doing a regular postgame just for members, we're going to do a live one. So all 3 hours are live and free to everybody. And we're going to just take YouTube super chat questions in the last half hour. All right, more madness from Donald Trump, but also good news about climate change and how we're actually having an intelligent discussion about it. So
at times.
Okay. God bless. All right,
yes.
So let's get started.
All right, so we're gonna dig into the CNN climate town hall that took place yesterday. The one thing I just want to say right off the bat is, to me, it really did reveal the importance of having the candidates all up on the same stage at the same time to discuss their ideas, because there are such huge differences between the two groups of Democrats, the more establishment or centrist Democrats and the progressives. And I think the DNC is purposely avoiding that type of scenario because they don't want to draw attention to how much better the progressives are. But anyway, I'm gonna make that case throughout a series of stories, so let's get started.
We are the most powerful country on earth. We should be leading the world to a global energy transition, and you have a president who thinks it's not real. That is idiotic.
That's Bernie Sanders sharing his views on climate change from outer space. I'm just kidding, he was at the CNN town hall on climate, and he was actually a huge influence throughout the entire 7 hours that this took place. 10 of the candidates participated in this, and the reason why I say he was such a huge influence is because he, out of all of the candidates, had the most robust and comprehensive climate change plan. He took from the Green New Deal and turned it into actual legislation. And so the candidates were asked about that throughout the night, which I thought was important. Now, Jay Inslee was also mentioned quite a bit throughout the event. Governor Jay Inslee dropped out of the race in August after putting out more than 200 pages of climate change policy, all of it ambitious and detailed. And so the moderators would, the CNN hosts would ask specific questions about points that Inslee had made. The whole fact that this event is happening, I would say, Jay Inslee deserves credit because it was something that he pushed for. Now, Inslee sat down with Senator Elizabeth Warren in Seattle last week as she was crafting her climate plan. He chatted with former Texas Representative Beto O'Rourke, former Vice President Joe Biden, and Senators Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, and Amy Klobuchar. Former Housing Secretary Julian Castro has been looking for me, Inslee told Vox Wednesday, but they haven't been able to connect yet. So the fact that they're going to him and asking for advice, I think is fascinating, and you can see that some of his ideas were certainly expressed in the answers from some of these candidates last night.
Yeah, so I'm going to declare Jay Inslee the most successful candidate to ever drop out. He has technically a failed presidential candidate campaign, and it didn't last that long. I mean, he dropped out 5 months before any of the voting began. So you can say it's a blip on the radar, but of all the different so-called failed campaigns, man, has he found success in branding himself, I think rightfully so, as the leader in climate change policy. And so now when everybody says, as the guy who dropped out said, right? And I went to the guy who dropped out and got advice from him because he knows this issue so well. So that's a great job of, look, honestly, a little bit of marketing, right? But also because he has a substance to back it up. So great job by Inslee. I'd say the only other candidate that reminds me of this that didn't have any tangible success in the votes or even getting to the votes was Larry Lessig last time around when he ran on the issue of money in politics, and Hillary Clinton responded by putting out a huge campaign platform on that. The day that Lessig entered the race, Bernie Sanders moved it up his priority list, et cetera. So sometimes these failed campaigns could actually have great results, and sometimes not. I mean, the exact opposite of that is probably Seth Moulton's campaign from this year. Exactly.
Yeah. So I do want to, before we go on to more of the substance, I do want to point out something that was pretty jarring to me. I didn't notice it last night, but I did notice it after Nando Vila, who comes and hosts with us quite often, posted about this on Instagram. So let's go to the first graphic. This is a lower third from the climate town hall that CNN had put together. How big a crisis is the climate? Am I being too harsh? This is.
Yeah, I hear you, but look, it is too harsh, and I'll tell you why. So look, I get it, it's a bad graphic, but you have to give CNN a lot of credit. 7-hour town hall on climate change. And no one thinks that that's necessarily going to be a ratings gangbuster. They did that and gave it that much space. It was bold. And by the way, a lot of the questions, some of the original couple of hours were so unusual Republican talking points with how are you going to pay for that, blah blah blah, that type of questioning. But most of the experts that looked at it thought that they did a pretty good town hall. I'm just keeping it real, right? And they had all these 10 candidates on. They rotated them through, but very importantly, they also had the audience ask questions. And I don't know if it was their curation or not, but certainly I have to give them credit for the audience questions were excellent.
So let's get to some of the differences with the candidates and some of the themes that I think are important to bring up and pick apart. So Klobuchar said that she supported individual efforts like the ones Governor Inslee talks about so well. Things like even using cold water for the clothes saves 5 times the energy. So her emphasis in the town hall, and I think that this is exactly what a centrist Democrat would pivot to in order to prevent angering fossil fuel donors. Don't attack the fossil fuel industry, just pivot to individuals and what they can do on a personal level to help save the environment. But let's keep it real. That is not nearly enough, not even close. And so, the fact that she mentioned that, we should wash our clothes with cold water. That's not gonna solve climate change, which is why it is important to have, again, all the candidates up on the same stage so people in the audience, American voters, can see the very significant differences between these candidates. Pointing to the average American and telling them, don't use plastic straws, don't use plastic bags, and wash your clothes with cold water, those are all great things, but it's not nearly enough, and it's a way of skirting the real issue, which is the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, well, look, a lot of them didn't, and I of course I agree with you. I mean, that's why we're trying to put together a climate change debate. That's our ideal, and I'd love to have them all on the stage at the same time. We're doing it at tyt.com/town hall. We call it town hall because we can't do a debate. We're going to do a town hall, but the debate would, the DNC doesn't want to happen, right? But look, I hope a lot of people watch the 7 hours, but it's unlikely. If you had them all in the same room and compare and contrast and had great moderators, and we're working on all of that for you guys because you've raised a lot of money for this purpose. And look, I've got a couple of candidates who say if others are willing to go, we'll come. So it's kind of starting to build a little bit here, but it is very difficult to put together when the DNC says they'll punish anyone who participates in a climate change debate. But the Klobuchars of the world, if you take fossil fuel money and you don't have any bold plans, how are you going to get out of the climate change debacle that we're in? I mean, it's an absolute catastrophe for the world, and you can't moderate your way out of that, right? Yeah. I've got a moderate plan for an extreme disaster.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense. But look, if she thinks she can defend that with real expert moderators, I would love that because I want to give everyone an opportunity to be heard out. But I think she's kind of a figment of the media's creation, who's like screaming for more moderation. It doesn't appear that there's a lot of momentum for that. But hey, at least CNN put her on. She got to make her case, and you saw that it was a more modest case, let's put it that way, than some of the others like Bernie Sanders.
One more thing about Klobuchar, and it's more a statement, a general statement about centrist Democrats. Her statement, which of course puts the onus on individuals as opposed to corporate donors, is so symbolic of everything corporate/centrist Democrats stand for, right? this is not a corporation problem. This is not a big business problem. This is a you problem. So you, as an American worker, as an American voter, you need to change your habits. Now, you can make a case for that, but that's not even half of what needs to be done, right? That's a tiny smidge of what needs to be done. So I just wanted to mention
and as
that.
usual, there's plenty of progressive candidates who are going after the fossil fuel companies very aggressively. And look, this is super important context. More aggressively than I have ever seen in my lifetime by an order of magnitude. I mean, Bernie Sanders is talking about putting fossil fuel executives in jail.
Yes.
Elizabeth Warren's talking about massive civil penalties, and Andrew Yang is going after them fiercely, etc. So, I mean, this is totally unprecedented. Until 2016, when Bernie started doing this, it was totally forbidden in American politics to ever challenge corporate power. And now we're in the midst of a real debate about, are some corporations literally destroying the planet?
So let's keep talking about Bernie Sanders. And this is an excerpt from a Vox piece that I thought was fascinating and very strong. Let's go to graphic 6. Sanders proposed the only plan so far that rivals Inslee's in scope and ambition. And it contained a few provisions that no other campaign has touched, most notably a plan to semi-nationalize the nation's electric utilities.
So look, it's a complicated topic, but let me just simplify a little bit for time's sake here. One way of looking at it is, you say, well, that sounds socialist, I can't believe it, etc. No, Sarah Palin in Alaska had increased the amount of revenue that the citizens of Alaska got from their own oil, because the gas under Pennsylvania, the oil in Alaska, are the people's oil, the people's gas, right? So I remember a Republican governor in Pennsylvania said, well, oh no, I got to give tax breaks to all these fossil fuel companies, otherwise they'll leave. Where are they gonna go? The gas is under Pennsylvania, right? So it's such a total lie because they take corporate donations and sell them out. Sarah Palin got to 80% approval rating in Alaska by doing the most socialist program I have seen in my lifetime, where she said, no, I'm gonna just take more of the profits from the oil companies and give it to the citizens. Okay, that was the only positive thing she's ever done, but that's what made her so popular. It is our resources, and we get to decide whether we want to use them or not use them, and who should profit off of them.
Vox also writes that Sanders benefited from following Biden, who was as rambling and unfocused as he has been this whole campaign season. By contrast, Sanders was sharp and on message with easy command over the details of his plan.
Yeah, I mean,
he wrote the damn bill.
The double standard that the media uses for different people is maddening. If Bernie Sanders had drawn on a National Weather Service map with a Sharpie, he'd be disqualified. Everybody would say, no, it's over. If he had said,
including us.
Yeah, and if he had said when he was in New Hampshire that he was in Vermont, I mean, even though Bernie's from Vermont, or maybe because he's from Vermont, you're like, oh, he's losing it, disqualified, old senile, blah, blah, blah. You know, Jennifer Rubin would have written 18 articles about it in the Washington Post on one day alone, right? But Biden does these things and they're like, that's good old Joe, doesn't know anything about fossil fuel companies, doesn't know anything about climate change, good old Joe, right? No, what's the good old Joe part about it? Trump does it. I mean, he's a lunatic, and nobody ever takes any action. But Bernie, I mean, man, has he put that H thing to bed?
Yeah.
Like, there's two candidates in this election, Trump and Biden, that have that issue in spades. Bernie's not among them, sharp as he's ever been, according to all objective analysts.
And during the town hall, he said, quote, I spent my entire life fighting for workers. Let me be clear, the coal miners in this country, the men and women who work on the oil rigs, they are not my enemy. My enemy is climate change. So I think it's incredibly important to make that clear, because the talking point that's been used by the right wing, and it's been used successfully, has been that the Democrats want to take your jobs away. They want to leave you high and dry with nothing to fall back on. And Bernie Sanders is making it clear, not only through that statement, but also through his actual legislation, his proposal, that there is a jobs guarantee, that no one is going to be left without a job, and that the enemy here is not the workers who, in a lot of cases, lose their lives when they're working in those coal mines. So that was excellent. He did a great job last night, and we will talk about him more later in the show.
And just real quick, it's not just loose talk, it's in the bill to transition those workers and get them equal or better pay in renewable energy companies. So Trump just goes, oh, I'm gonna save coal. And coal jobs go completely eliminated under Trump's watch, and he doesn't do anything. It was just all verbal diarrhea. Whereas Bernie Sanders has an actual plan to get you better jobs.
Exactly. And then finally, just this piece of information that I think is important. There were some differences with the candidates, obviously, but all 10 candidates want to restrict drilling on public lands. Senator Bernie Sanders wants criminal prosecution of climate polluters. Kamala Harris wants to sue them. Booker and Sanders so far have said they would ban fracking. They're the only two who have been incredibly clear on that. So credit where credit is due.
Yeah, so Cory Booker, great job on the fracking ban. And I'm sorry, I said earlier about suing and said it was Elizabeth Warren. It's actually Kamala Harris, and that corrected it right there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so with that said, let's move on to specific candidates. We don't have time to get into all 10 of them, but there were some moments involving Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Biden that I want to talk about. So let's start off with Elizabeth Warren. The Trump administration, of course, is trying to mischaracterize individuals like Elizabeth Warren and what they want to do with climate change or to combat climate change. And one of the things that they keep latching onto is that these lefties are going after your straws, they're going after your hamburgers. And so in an effort to push this message out, they took a portion of Elizabeth Warren's answer from the CNN town hall last night, and they edited it down to make it appear as though the only thing she's focusing on is attacking your burgers. So here is what the Trump campaign released, and then we're gonna show you the full context of what she said. Take a look.
Be in the business of telling you what kind of light bulb you can have.
Oh, come on, give me a break. You know.
Is that a yes?
No, look, there are a lot of ways that we try to change our energy consumption and our pollution. And God bless all of those ways. Some of it is with light bulbs, some of it is on straws, some of it, dang, is on cheeseburgers, right? There are a lot of different pieces to this, and I get that people are trying to find the part that they can work on and what can they do, and I'm in favor of that, and I'm gonna help and I'm gonna support.
So that was what the Trump campaign released, but they did not include the rest of her answer, which I actually think was a strong answer. It goes back to a point I've been trying to make about how combating climate change is not just about individual actions. In fact, that's a small part of it. The real issue is the fossil fuel industry, and that's what you're about to hear in the rest of Elizabeth Warren's answer.
And I get that people are trying to find the part that they can work on and what can they do, and I'm in favor of that, and I'm gonna help and I'm gonna support. But understand, this is exactly what the fossil fuel industry hopes we're all talking about. That's what they want us to talk about. This is your problem. They want to be able to stir up a lot of controversy around your light bulbs, around your straws, and around your cheeseburgers. When 70% of the pollution, of the carbon that we're throwing into the air comes from 3 industries, and we can set our targets and say by 2028, 2030, and 2035, no more. Think about that right there. Now, the other 30% we still got to work on. Oh no, we don't stop at 70%. But the point is that's where we need to focus. And why don't we focus there? It's corruption. It's these giant corporations that keep hiring the PR firms that does that. Everybody has fun with it, right? Gets it all out there. So we don't look at who's still making the big bucks of polluting our earth.
So she actually went further in discussing the fossil fuel industry and how it has corrupted lawmakers. I want to give you one other quote. She said, and this is graphic 3, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to attack this corruption head on in Washington and say enough of having the oil industry, the fossil fuel industry, write all of our laws in this area. No more, no more. That was, in my opinion, her strongest moment during this town hall.
No, that was fantastic. And so, look, guys, I'm guilty too, and the Republicans make a huge stink out of it. So we all try hard, and there's different things that we're not. Have you ever thrown a Coke can or a beer can in non-recycling. Yeah, sometimes there's situations where there's no recycling around. What are you gonna do, carry it around 3 different states and until you find a recycling one? Yeah, sometimes that happens. In one of our shows on Old School, I talked about, I hate paper straws. I can't stand them, okay? I had a cheeseburger for lunch. So that doesn't mean that you go, okay, then give up, then don't do anything, right? No, try to recycle when you can, etc. But when you're doing everything that you can, even if you're imperfect, what are the areas that you could have the biggest impact on? And that's where you gotta keep it real. Government has the biggest impact because the decisions it can make about those industries. So if 3 industries cause 70% of the problem, I love you, try to use paper straws instead of plastic straws, and I'll try too, okay? But we should spend a lot more of our time and energy focusing on the people that are causing the overwhelming amount of the problem, right? So and that's obviously the fossil fuel industry. It's the most obvious thing in the world. The reason Trump lies about it by deceptively editing that video is they get money from the fossil fuel industry. They are the bad guys. So the Trump team, and by the way, it's not just Trump, and a lot of the media try to paint it that way. The entire Republican Party,
yes,
they all take money from the fossil fuel companies. And by the way, half the Democratic Party, okay? They take money from those companies. And so to answer Anderson Cooper's question from 2016 when he incredulously asked Bernie Sanders, are you saying it affects their votes? Of course it affects their votes. Why do you think the oil companies give those guys, when you count all the lobbying, billions of dollars to politicians for their health? For our health? No, it's to buy them off, and they do. As Bernie Sanders pointed out, when you include not just subsidies but tax breaks, the fossil fuel companies get $400 billion a year. Why are we paying the most profitable companies in the world? I mean, that is bare minimum. I mean, he talks about phasing that out. I'm sure there's practical reasons for that, but that's a situation where I would be to the left of Bernie Sanders. I would want to stop that on day one.
You have to. I mean, it's really the only way you can get anything accomplished. If you allow this corrupt system to take place, then you're not gonna have any lawmakers on your side, even as they argue that they're part of your party and they wanna fight with you.
Yeah,
so
now if you don't, I mean, look, if politicians take money from fossil fuel companies, you know who they're gonna serve. They're not gonna serve you, they're not gonna serve the planet. They're gonna serve the people writing them checks. And everyone except the folks on TV know this, but that's why I'm giving CNN credit and a lot of the Democratic candidates credit here, because finally we're having a conversation about the real problem. You can have all the cheeseburgers in the world that you want, as long as we actually go after the fossil fuel companies creating most of the pollution.
All right, we got to take a break, but we're going to continue this discussion by focusing on Bernie Sanders and Biden. Speaking of contributions from the fossil fuel industry, there was a lot of drama in his portion of the town hall. So come back, we'll be back after this break.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Man, there's a lot of Klobuchar hate on here. So there's 2 themes in the comments. First, Megan says, stop blaming the average person for what is caused 70% by corporations.
Yes.
Okay, and a lot of people agree with that. DDNYC writes in, I've been washing my clothes in cold water for the last 50 years and still the icebergs are melting. LOL. And Lynn agrees, she's been a vegetarian, washing clothes in cold water for decades, etc. And we still have climate crisis. Now on to Klobuchar, Kenny Doe says, the most shocking thing about Klobuchar's appearance last night was finding out that she's still running for president.
I know, it's.
Katie Nicole 87 asks, how on earth did Amy Klobuchar qualify for the debate and Tulsi didn't? Well, look, CNN did it based on the polling.
Yeah.
And in the polling, she does get to 2%. Is that because every media figure loves Klobuchar? Yeah, partly, because they're always giving her positive press. Oh, Klobuchar could be president. Klobuchar. Did they do that for Tulsi? No. For Tulsi, they say, oh, Assad, Bashar al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad, Bashar, every time.
That's true. And also, in a situation like this, Tulsi Gabbard has way more interesting things to say than Klobuchar does. Klobuchar
Of course,
offers
yeah.
nothing to the conversation. So it's frustrating, but look, if it were up to me, especially when it comes to these upcoming debates, people are not gonna like what I'm about to say, but I would have cut more people from it.
Yeah,
let's have the top 5. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I don't
like
agree at
these
all.
vanity projects are becoming incredibly annoying at this point.
Yeah. All right, that's all right. Normal disagreement. Tomanandona writes in, Klobuchar's ideas on climate change are like handing out duct tape on the Titanic. We got this, dog. Let's just tape it up. It's gonna be okay. And not a bad point. Let me just end on Twitter here. VVV0 says, can I get a shout out, Cenk? Today's my birthday and I'm feeling pretty crap about it.
Why?
Wrong, you're not feeling great because we just wished you a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Okay, all right, that's enough of that. Okay, Eclectic Miscellanea says.
No fun today.
I
Jeez.
know, right? What is wrong with me today? Anyway, Eclectic Miscellanea says, I'm with Anna. How big a crisis is climate is really weak sauce question. Did the next graphic ask, is water wet? Okay, so a lot of you with strong opinions, bless your hearts.
I love it.
TYT.com/townhall, let's make that happen.
All right, so let's talk a little more about Bernie Sanders because the right wing is smearing him as usual. Well, the right wing and the left wing smear him. But in this case, it's one of the most ridiculous smears. So let's go to the CNN town hall. During the CNN town hall on climate, Bernie Sanders was asked a very provocative question, and his answer has outraged people on the right. Take a look.
I realize this is a poisonous topic for politicians, but it's crucial to face. Empowering women and educating everyone on the need to curb population growth seems a reasonable campaign to enact. Would you be courageous enough to discuss this issue and make it a key feature of a plan to address climate catastrophe?
Well, Martha, the answer is yes. And the answer has everything to do with the fact that women in the United States of America, by the way, have a right to control their own bodies and make reproductive decisions. And the Mexico City Agreement, which denies American aid to those organizations around the world that allow women to have abortions or even get involved in birth control, to me is totally absurd. So I think, especially in poor countries around the world, where women do not necessarily want to have large numbers of babies, and where they can have the opportunity through birth control to control the number of kids they have, something I very, very strongly support.
I personally thought that was a good answer. And the reason why I think it's a good answer is because, look, if you buy into the notion that overpopulation is the real problem here, and honestly, I don't think that's the heart of the climate crisis. What would you do about population control? You can't force people to avoid having kids. I mean, we saw the ramifications of that in China. Now there's this huge imbalance with the one-child policy when it comes to the sex of people. There are more men, way more men than women, and that's gonna be a disaster.
You know how many more? There are 40 million more men in China than women. Epic disaster.
So his answer about empowering women to make the right choices for themselves is absolutely correct, because there are people living in countries where they don't have reproductive rights, they don't have access to birth control, and so they end up having children that they don't necessarily want to have. So I actually really liked his answer. I liked that he pivoted to reproductive rights. But then there are people on the right, people like S.E. Cupp, who didn't even take the time to read his Green New Deal policy, which says nothing about population control, and had a meltdown on Twitter. So let me read you her tweets.
Of course she did. Oh, what a moderate Republican. We have a moderate Republican, everybody.
I know.
God, cable news loves those. Okay.
So she writes, how do you not say unequivocally no to the question of whether you support the idea of curbing population growth through abortion to reduce climate change? Well,
that's not what she said.
Yeah, I know. She's completely smearing him. Well, watch. This is apparently how. And then she followed that with, let's just state for the record, talking about needing population control through abortion. Who is she, Trump? For the sake of climate, is talking about eugenics. No, it's not. The fact that Bernie Sanders is willing to entertain this vile idea is not only disgusting, it should be disqualifying. Well,
oh, shut up.
So let me just, abortion is not eugenics, right? Eugenics is something very specific. Eugenics is the science of selective and controlled breeding in an effort to increase human characteristics and traits deemed desirable. Eugenics is not meant for, lowering the population.
I hate having these fake debates about fake points by dumbass Republicans, right? So she asked, hey, should we do something about population growth? She didn't ask, should we force people to have abortions? She didn't ask that. We just showed you the tape. You could rewind and watch, right? So Bernie didn't say, yes, I would like to control population through abortions. He didn't say that. What he said is, I want to give people the choice in a free country to do anything they like with their bodies. You know who agrees with that, SC Cup? I know almost no one on cable news. Everybody, oh, no, moderate Republicans, I love moderate Republicans. To be fair, most people on cable news are also pro-choice. Okay, but anyway, I can't help but be fair even when I'm worked up, okay?
You should be.
But 71% of Americans agree with that, 71%. So oh my God, I can't believe that these monsters who want to do eugenics. No, they don't. They just want a woman to be able to choose what to do with her body. That's it. So you're twisting it on purpose and misleading people, and because Republicans have no actual points to make. Okay, SC Cup, what is your stupid ass party doing about climate change? Nothing. They just go to the oil companies, go, oh, I drink your milk, and they suck up the dollars from the oil companies.
And not with a paper straw.
Okay, that's right, with a plastic straw, goddammit. And so, and then, so you want to distract people by pretending to say that Bernie Sanders said something he clearly didn't say. We just showed you the goddamn tape. So I don't want to have an argument about eugenics, false argument, nonsense. But what drives me crazy is how much Washington loves people like SC Cup. Oh, a disingenuous Republican pretending to be a moderate while destroying the planet. Oh, that's so good. Put her all over TV. Has she ever gotten ratings? Never. She's worked at like 8 different cable news companies and never gotten any ratings at all. But they're like, oh, it's a moderate Republican. Yes, let's put her on. Can we find any others? There's like 3 left in the country.
Yeah, look, I'm just gonna reiterate. And I know that there are hosts on cable news, not all of them, but people like SC Cup who just refuse to read policy. I mean, you should be required as part of your job to sit down and read policy. There is a very comprehensive, robust policy proposal by Bernie Sanders in an effort to combat climate change. Nowhere in that legislation does it say anything about population control. Nowhere in that legislation does Bernie Sanders say, no, we need to push for abortion so we can have population control. It's just ridiculous. They're just, like, the thing that frustrates me the most, and this goes back to a theme that I complain about a lot on this show. In this country, you get rewarded for being lazy, for being dumb, for being disingenuous, for being a bad person. Like in this country, if you actually have intellectual curiosity, you do the hard work, you learn about the policy, you learn about the legislation, you sit down, you actually read it word for word, where do you end up? You end up somewhere in independent media where you make no money and you constantly get demonetized. But if you're like SC Cup and you're a disingenuous hack, then yeah, you fail upward. You're right, she's been on how many cable networks now?
Yeah, so, okay, look, last thing about this. Unfortunately, this is greatly aided and abetted by the rest of the media. Why? I've now seen like 12 headlines of Sanders under fire for remarks about population control. Under fire, okay? No, the planet's under fire. The Republicans made up a stupid talking point. One commentator said it, and the rest of you, like lemmings, helped the Republicans with their nonsense talking points. You think people read into the article? No, they see the headline and they go, oh, I guess Bernie wants to kill everybody. And so his idea for fixing climate change is making everybody do mandatory abortions. I don't know, I saw the headline in every major media organization. Yeah. I mean, the degree to which they are unfair to Bernie Sanders is so preposterous that when you point out, hey, listen, you're saying the opposite of what he said. They're like, oh, now you're complaining about the media, Bernie Sanders. Oh, what a sad thing to do, to complain about the media. So that's also your fault. You shouldn't complain about the things that we write about you that are totally and utterly false.
Right. And I mean, I honestly don't think it's a mistake that out of all the candidates, he tends to get the most provocative questions. He gets a population control question in this town hall. He got the question about whether or not it makes sense to give inmates the right to vote. And that hurt him temporarily.
Here are correct headlines for editors out there. Republicans smear Bernie Sanders with something he didn't say. That would be a correct headline. Instead, you did their job for them in the form of a question like Fox News does. Remember when Jon Stewart used to make fun of that? Did Bernie Sanders say kill people to control the climate? Did he? I don't know. SC Cup asked the question, said it, so I don't know. I'm just putting it in the headline. I don't know, right? So write accurate headlines. And by the way, call Republicans and conservatives what they actually are. They're the anti-freedom party. They don't want you to have the freedom to control your own body. Of course, if you're a guy, you have all the freedom in the world. But if you're a woman, you don't have that freedom. So they're against freedom. So you don't get to claim you're in favor of freedom if you're against it. I mean, the most core freedom in the world. And the big government Republicans who want to be inside your uterus. That's a fact. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem. But it is a fact, they're for giant government. No, you do this, and your doctor does this, and I put you in prison. That's big government, that's what it is. So try to be accurate for once in your life. I know when it comes to Bernie Sanders, you're all so incredibly biased that you can't see straight, but give it a shot.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to discuss Biden's portion of this climate town hall, and we're gonna talk about his source of funding, Jerome's. Come right back.